the Pumpkin Center and east of North Hodge as well.
Yep, the Hebron community. Sorry, I keep talking over you, Walker.
No,
we're just going to keep spitting information out for these folks. Garner Road in the Hebron community, folks south and east of Highway 542 and headed toward the Kelly Road areas. And again, this is in and around the Hebron community. Radar confirmed tornado on the ground. Lots of heavy rainfall in this area as well. Take this very, very seriously. Probably one of the strongest areas of rotation we've seen in our area so far today.
Absolutely. I would completely agree with you, Jared, and that's what we're expecting, the potential for these storms to strengthen up really tightly pretty quickly, and maybe it falls apart, but as of now, that confirmed tornado, it has been observed that you need to be in your safe place, and that cannot be understated as of this point, and very tight and very bright colored green. And here's the thing, when you see the reds and greens together, yeah, that's one thing, but when you almost can even get a picture of how those greens wrap around and the reds wrap around.
Go to our radar, Walker. I think you're going to get a new scan every 60 seconds, and you're going to be able to stay right on this. It's pretty unmistakable at this point what we're seeing, and you're in the exact same spot. But yeah, there it is in the Hebron community. If you need to every now and then, it may be ideal to kind of zoom out, zoom back in, just to kind of reset your eyes, because it's sometimes tough to see. There's a lot of stuff going on there, right there. But again, sandwiched between just southeast of Highway 542. You need to be in your safe place now.
Right, and so what we're looking at now is live storm tracker Doppler radar getting a new scan, and it's ever so slightly moving a little bit further north there. It's actually staying pretty almost dead center in that warning as of now, the warning that's been here for quite some time. I do believe that we originally got it around 4:30, now 5:01, so plenty of lead time for all these folks. We've been talking about the potential for this circulation to hold itself together in the event that it did, and it has, and so staying in your safe place is going to be imperative. I'm going to quickly look over at
the debris signature still there too, Walker.
The debris signature.
Yep.
And again, the structure might be a little bit hard to see, but where you start to see a little bit of this green move into the red, that's where that potential circulation would be, and the appendage, so to speak, it's not super visible, but again, what we're looking at is we're looking at the structure of the storm as well as what we're noticing with rotation, so it's multifaceted. I'm actually going to look over at our shear rate really quickly too, not really seeing anything there, but nonetheless that velocity couplet is still holding on.
New flash flood warning out for Bienville, Jackson, Lincoln, Natchitoches, Ouachita, and Wynn parishes. Just a huge flash flood warning for the heavy rain that's coming in, so just be aware of that. Power outages now being reported in Jonesboro with trees down on Walker Road and trees across a mobile home in the same area. Still have that radar, that confirmed radar tornado debris signature now east of Highway 542 near the Kelly Road community, headed toward the St. Rest community and Winfield Road and the Vernon Highway, all within the tornado warning. Be in your safe place now.
Yeah, just changed over to the National Weather Service out of Shreveport's radar because we were getting some bad scans on ours.
Yep.
But as I look at storm relative velocity, the reds and the greens are extremely close together. And as mentioned, this is a confirmed tornado, so we're not speculating anymore. It has been confirmed, at least been visible at one point in its life cycle. So depending on if it picks back up, puts back down, regardless, it's been known to produce a tornado. And so you can see the very strong circulation that likely continues. And so being in your safe place is imperative. Not looking at the storm or venturing outside to look at it, that is going to be something you have to do. Do not go outside to look at this, especially you're in the immediate vicinity, because as Jared mentioned, there's a debris signature, and so that debris is being thrown up into the air, lofted thousands of feet up, potentially getting slung out across the area, even if you're far away from the circulation itself. So being in your safe place is imperative, and staying away from any outside walls, windows, or doors, especially glass. Granted, if you see a 2x4 and it hits glass, it's going to shatter and it's going to likely go into your home. So staying away from windows is extremely important. Going to head back over to live storm tracker Doppler radar, back to the velocity, and I've got another scan here. It looks a little bit better than otherwise previously. And we're probably going to start to stick on our radar just a little bit more because the storm is moving closer to our area, and so live storm tracker Doppler radar are going to have a little bit of a better vantage point. Here comes that next sweep, and again, still noticing the reds and the greens. Again, it's going to look a little bit messy, messier on our radar as opposed to others, but if I just bounce around, you can easily still see it's visible.
Yeah, Walker, if we could hop over, and you could see the reds and greens there. If you could hop over to me on the BAM real quick so we could take a closer look again. The Kelly Road Community, State Highway 542. Just want to give Walker a chance to rest his arms and catch a swig of water for a second. Winfield Road, State Highway 4, which is going to be kind of on the bottom side of your screen here, but just resetting what we have going on at 5:04. You would normally be joining us for NBC 10 News at 5, but obviously weather coverage is now our NBC 10 newscast. Our Fox 14 viewers are wrapped in as well. We have a confirmed tornado on the ground in portions of Jackson Parish, moving toward between the Hebron and St. Rest communities. This is the Kelly Road area east of Highway 542. And again, with the latest updates, it doesn't look like this storm has moved much, or at least the possible tornado hasn't moved much. You can see Antioch, Pumpkin Center, Rockfield, North Hodge, Jonesboro would be just off the screen to your bottom left-hand side. And up to the top part of the screen, we would be talking about areas like, well, Ruston's on the far top left-hand side of your screen, but moving toward I-20, we would start talking about the Shudrint communities, eventually downstream maybe the Downsville communities. Chatham and Eris are on the far right-hand side of your screen, just off the screen. So again, while some areas are under these tornado warnings, others are not.
Jared, just rather quickly, we're still seeing a debris signature with the tornado northwest of Weston. This tornado is headed towards Vernon or just west of Vernon. So that tornado debris signature is still there.
So there's the Vernon Highway. So Vernon's basically right up here off the top part of your screen. But again, the St. Rest community, here's the Roscoe Road, and our new tornado, if I could draw the new circle, it'd be right here to the south of the St. Rest community, and Walker will get you kind of squared back away there. But again, a very dangerous storm, confirmed tornado on the ground. Make sure that you're in your safe place. You've had a lot of lead time in eastern sections of Jackson Parish. For folks in western Ouachita Parish, eastern Lincoln Parish, you need to start keeping an eye on this storm. If it's confirmed on the ground, it may be on the ground for a little while. There's no promises, but it's a possibility. Let's go back over to Walker on the wall, who can continue to break down this storm from a lot of different vantage points on radar. Walker?
Thank you very much, Jared. And again, it's very well defined as of this point. I'm looking at Shreveport's radar. We're looking at storm relative velocity that's slightly different from normal velocity. So storm relative velocity actually takes into account the storm motion, how that storm is moving, and kind of takes it away from the equation, and it basically allows us to see the circulation just a little bit better. I want to explain at least some of the science behind it. And again, we just got another update. Another scan. I'm going to do another circle and then maybe try to get some more road names here in a second. I'm going to actually take a little bit of a bigger look, leave that circle up. And what you're noticing is that tornado warning expands all the way to I-20, includes Shudrint. Way to the southwest is the circulation as of this point, but Shudrint nonetheless still included in that tornado warning. And so we're going ahead and going to go now that there's heavy rainfall all across I-20. If you know points east of here and you're trying to head west, you need to stay and avoid I-20 at all costs as of this point. And folks near the Ruston community or Simsboro's Arcadia, and you're trying to work east, you have to stay off I-20. Not only is the visibility extremely low as of this point, but the potential for that tornado or the circulation to hold itself together is still there as well. And if it holds together, it could potentially eventually traverse I-20 and cross to areas just north. So what we're looking at now, as Jared mentioned, it's going to be portions of Jackson Parish, and as the storm continues to work to the north and east here, going to look a little bit closer.
Yeah, Shudrint community would be the spot along I-20 that needs to keep an eye on this storm. So folks that are driving from Monroe to Ruston, maybe not Monroe or maybe not Ruston, but areas in between, really need to keep an eye on this storm in the next hour and a half.
And so the new circulation that I have puts us right over St. Rest. That's where that possible tornado is if it's still on the ground. It was confirmed earlier in its life cycle, and that can't be understated, is because it's kind of like you have to treat each storm like a person. It has some characteristics. And so if it's previously been able to produce a tornado, it could also produce one later on in its life cycle. So you kind of have to treat it like a person would. You kind of remember some of the characteristics that it's held together. And so that's why it's so important for you to be in your safe place and maintain that. The circulation may be getting a little bit weirded out by this specific radar scan, so I'm going to head back over to ours.
Yeah, and just and while you make that journey and kind of bounced from radar mode to radar mode. And again, it looks really right toward the Vernon community, right along the Vernon Highway. But we're also still getting new reports of debris signature north and northwest of Weston. That was about 3 or 4 minutes ago. But again, damage. Now we're starting to get reports of a damage path, unconfirmed, in and around Highway 4 between Jonesboro and Weston. This was where that confirmed tornado moved.
A little bit further south.
Yeah, so again, this storm now has a history of producing wind damage. We can likely confirm a tornado and probably say that that was tornado damage. We can't say it with a whole lot of certainty, but that's just obviously something to keep in mind.
And so we're looking at Shreveport's storm relative velocity, and again, the reds
Here's your
are
new
still
tornado.
there.
Here's a new tornado warning. This is still a confirmed tornado, by the way, out for Jackson, Lincoln, Ouachita, and Union parishes. This does not include Monroe and West Monroe, but it does include Ruston. It does include Shudrint. It includes Downsville. Severe thunderstorm, a confirmed large and dangerous tornado located 10 miles northeast of Jonesboro, moving north at 30 miles per hour. So there's your new tornado warning. Will go until, I believe, 6 o'clock tonight. And again, that warning includes a good chunk of I-20 from the west, from the Ouachita-Lincoln line all the way to just west of Ruston.
So basically what the National Weather Service did here is they're updating the fact that this storm is a little bit further down than the original tornado warning that they issued. They want to include points a little bit further east, so they're trying to encapsulate the opportunity for this thing to maybe migrate a little bit further east and a little bit further west, while also making sure a lot of the highly residential areas and folks with a lot of population are actually making sure that they're getting some type of a warning as well. And you can kind of notice that warning has shifted a little bit further north, looking as opposed to just to the east there, and so that's an important thing to note, and that's why the majority of Ruston now included in that tornado warning, because that slight adjustment, if you will. So we're going to go ahead and get a little bit of a closer look yet again.
Winfield and the Vernon Highway, Winfield Road and the Vernon Highway moving into the Vernon community. This tornado, if it's still on the ground, which all indications are that it is, will be headed toward the Vernon community shortly, probably in the next 2 minutes. So again, you need to be in your safe place now. The Olive Grove Road community up on the top right-hand side of your screen going out of Vernon will be headed toward your direction shortly. So again, if these roads sound familiar, be in your safe place now. Reiser Road, Vernon Highway, the Vernon community in general, and Winfield Road. Interior portion of your home away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible.
Absolutely, Jared. And again, I kind of circled the rotation back over again. We're back on the velocity, not the storm relative velocity. Again, whatever gives us the best vantage point. That's all that we're doing when we change the different radar modes and scans. We just want the best vantage point to get the best information out to you folks. That's the only thing that we're doing. So just pardon me from time to time from changing around to different radar modes. But even looking at some of the shear, again, it's not going to be as organized, but the threat for heavy damaging winds is going to continue with this storm system in general, not just some of the heavy rainfall and not just the tornado potential either. And again, that circulation, this is the only one that we have for now, and it's going to take a lot of our attention. We've been following this particular storm system. We've been on the air since about 3:40. This was the second tornado warning that we've gotten, and this little circulation right here has needed 3 separate tornado warnings. So it's had a life cycle that has been pretty long-lived as of now, and that clearly says that the environment is conducive for making sure that that tornado holds itself together. We have tons of moisture, tons of energy to work with, and since we really haven't seen much for activity to use that storm energy, that's why that circulation is going to hold itself together, or likely hold itself together. And that's why it's all the more important to notice and to point out the fact that folks in Ruston, in Shudrint, and around the I-20 corridor needs to be in their safe place. And if you're not already there, you need to be heading there now. And so if you need to call some folks, you need to go ahead and do that as well and make sure that they're in a safe place. And I think Jared's actually trying to get a vantage point on one of our tower cams. So while he's doing that, we're going to continue to circle this rotation. Doesn't look as it looks a little bit more interesting now, I would say, but nonetheless, the reds and the greens very apparent.
Yeah, and if you want to take Dalvin, if you want to take links to full, you can see off in the distance. This is looking basically west from our tower cam here at the West Monroe Studios. And to be honest with you, out of all the tower cams we have, I think this is going to have the best vantage point, although this storm is still quite a ways away from us. Pardon the fact that there's a transmission tower right in the middle of the westbound view. We're actually looking a little bit south of due west. The Ike Hamilton Expo Center is there on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can see a lot of lightning, which would indicate that this storm is perhaps strengthening and really running into an unstable environment. In fact, a lot of the storm reports that we're getting from this storm are that it's almost frequent lightning. Numerous CG strikes, cloud-to-ground strikes is what we call them, but basically you don't want to be on the roadways with this storm. The lightning would be blinding, so the rain is blinding in itself. There's a confirmed tornado on the ground. Just all of the odds are stacked against you. So just kind of looking out to the west, we'll keep an eye on this vantage point for here in the next 10 minutes or so. I think this storm is going to probably miss us far enough west where we may not see much, but I just wanted to take a quick look at that and also just kind of get that visible confirmation of just how much lightning and heavy rainfall we're dealing with, Walker.
And thank you, Jared. And that's also going to obstruct the view, some of that heavy rainfall. So even if it's just there actually in view of the camera, some of the heavy rain shafts, so to speak, could actually be obstructing us from actually seeing it. So nonetheless, the circulation is still trying to hold itself together. The
still
reds,
there, Walker.
Yep, some of the brighter green colors. You see the other tornado warning was just canceled, so just ignore that. This is the only active warning we have now. And as previously mentioned, the old warning went until 5:15, excuse me, and it's 5:15 now. So it makes sense for that one to be canceled, and the new one actually is going to continue until 6. So the time now 5:15, a minimum 45 minutes potentially that we stay on the air as the circulation maybe dissipates. Maybe it holds itself together a little bit more. I'm going to head back over to our radar, Jared. I'm not sure if it has a better
It does. It's just to the northeast of the Vernon community. Zoomed out, it looks way more organized. When you get zoomed in, again, you get kind of blinded by just so much stuff that you're looking at. But right up the Olive Grove Road area that we were just talking about a few minutes ago, still, again, probably a rain-wrapped tornado at this point.
Right.
If I had to, if it's confirmed and on the ground, and I'm about to switch back over to check our coalition coefficients, I don't think that we have that that tornado debris signature anymore. But still, a very violent circulation that will be approaching I-20 probably in the next 10 to 15 minutes.
And it could be very well what we call it cycling, where it potentially cycles back down and maybe takes that breath in and then is getting ready to give that breath back out. And so that's why the tornado warning continues. That's why they're not very quick to cancel these warnings or anything of that sort. And I do believe that a good bit of it was, am I mistaken, Jared, or did this get trimmed off a little bit, that warning? I'm not quite certain.
I think that was just part of the old warning. So
okay.
I think we're good to go here. And like I said, this is going to move very, very close to the Shudrint community. Ruston, Vienna, Dubach, all those areas along 167, all included in this warning too.
And so I'm just going to leave this vantage point up here for a second. I'm not going to zoom in or change any radar products, just so you can get an idea and a picture of what we're dealing with. Most of this area is already seeing heavy rainfall. So folks in Ruston, if you're hearing the heavy rainfall, obviously that's associated with this same storm system. You need to be in your safe place. Folks in Shudrint is hearing the heavy rain and the frequent lightning as well. And what you're noticing is the reds, again, are winds moving towards the radar and away from the radar, excuse me, and the greens are moving towards. So where is Live Storm Tracker Doppler radar? Well, you can kind of see where that is. And so all these red winds are moving away from it, and these greens are moving towards it. You can see where the radar is and the cone of silence there, so to speak. And that's the main area of concern, what we have circled here. We're getting another scan, and we're going to see what it looks like. I may get another little bit of a zoom in here, and it may be trying to pulse back up again here in a second. We'll see.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Over the next couple of seconds, as we get more as we get some different scans here. So I'm going to circle this, head back over to reflectivity. Maybe we can see some structure ongoing with that storm. And seeing some of the little bit of the purples there could be indicative of I think it's something
stronger again. I think it's getting stronger again, Walker. That latest swipe from our radar, I would say, kind of confirms that too. In fact, I'm toying with the notion of switching modes again, because this is going to get closer to our radar site. But either way, yeah, this is still very much a dangerous storm, possibly tornadic storm. Although that debris signature isn't quite there anymore, this is still a very, very dangerous storm.
And so for folks that have joined joined us relatively recently or now joining the Facebook live stream, we've been live since about 3:40. That's when we originally started cutting in to programming and things of that sort. And so this is just a first cluster of storms that's moved into the area. So we've been fairly conducive so far of holding on to these circulations. And so even after this initial cluster of storms eventually comes and goes, the possibility for severe weather will continue late tonight, early tomorrow morning, and potentially through portions of the day tomorrow as well. So that cold front is going to take its sweet time to move through the area. So even if we start to clear this area in the next hour or two, it's not going to be the severe weather is over just yet. I know that can be a little bit numbing to some folks, but the severe weather threat persists, and that tornado watch persists until about 9 p.m., I do believe. Correct, Jared?
That's correct. And here in the next 2 minutes or so, as this storm starts to approach the I-20 corridor, the radar is going to change modes again, so don't let that catch you off guard, but it's going to switch to severe weather mode. So we will get some of the highest radar returns. If it's still spinning and it's still spinning close to the ground, which it looks like it is, we're going to get one of the best vantage points we can as it approaches I-20. Again, for folks in northern sections of Jackson Parish, north central Jackson Parish, far southern reaches of Lincoln Parish, including Ruston, Shudrint, and everybody along I-20 all the way to the Ouachita Parish line, you need to be in your safe place. A tornado warning remains in effect, and this storm has a history of producing wind damage.
And so before I go back to live storm tracker Doppler radar, even from the most recent scan, the most recent update from Shreveport's radar, it does in fact look to be spinning back up again, maybe that strengthening of that rotation. You see the greens and the reds. I'm going to head back over to ours now. I think it's probably done switching modes, or at least it will be relatively shortly. And as we switch, again, I think it's still fairly prevalent in terms of what we're looking at. Right, still south of Shudrint. Yep. Still southeast of Ruston. We're going to get another radar scan here in just a second and see what the update looks like.
I think that's going to be your last scan in this mode, but just again a reminder that these storms kind of come and go, and you can see the brighter reds and greens with this storm as it starts to make its way towards Shudrint. We'll be crossing I-20 probably in the next 5 minutes. If we can, while we're waiting on the radar to switch over to the new mode, if we could go back over to Lynx 2, take a closer look at that tower cam, and with the lightning flash. In fact, I'm going to try to zoom in on this, and Walker, you may want to kind of walk with me. I can't really see what I'm doing here, but I'm going to try to zoom in on what we're seeing out to.
Yeah, you might be able to see something.
We're having to work with the lightning flashes, and so every lightning flash you get kind of a vantage point of what's going on out on the horizon. Again, keep in mind that we're 20 miles-ish as the crow flies away from this storm. So we're looking quite a bit of a ways off, and I probably need to go back to the south just a smidge because the storm hasn't crossed the interstate. I don't think we're going to see anything just because of the heavy rainfall that you're seeing. And again, a lot of this area is kind of shrouded by heavy rainfall. So, and of course, as soon as we get kind of the vantage point we want, we're not seeing a whole lot of lightning. So, yeah, we're not going to really see a whole lot, I don't think, but we'll continue to keep an eye on this. I just want to kind of give our radar a second to switch modes, and with that, your circle and your same area on Lynx 1 still looks good. So we'll just go back over to Walker on the wall.
All right, thank you very much. Again, we're trying to see if we can see something, but it's rather difficult, and I think the radar product's about to switch over. So in the meantime, while it switches over, we're going to go look at something else. Just head over to Shreveport's radar. We've just been bouncing back and forth anyways, and regardless of where we're looking, it's still there, and you can very well see it no matter what radar product you're looking at as of this point, hoping to get a little bit of a better vantage point. But if I had to give some estimates here, which I'm going to do in just a second, so it does look to be about 5 to 6 miles just southwest of Shudrint, so very close as of this point. It's going to be a little bit further away southeast of Ruston, likely around the 6.5 mile range, 6 to 6.7. And so it's getting awfully close to the I-20 corridor now, and still very indicative of the reds and the greens, that circulation, the possible tornado. And again, this was confirmed on the ground earlier in its life cycle. Maybe it's picked back up, maybe it's not back on the ground, but we're not quite sure as of this point either. And that's why I was mentioning earlier, we have to note the characteristics. We know that this guy has been misbehaving, obviously, and so we're going to have to continue to keep an eye on it. And I'm going to head back over to our radar. I think we might be done switching modes.
You've got two different modes, and there's actually kind of two different areas of circulation. There's There's the
Interesting.
primary one where the reds and greens are clearly combined together, and then there's that other one just to the south. There, and with that latest refresh, it's still there as well. And when you look at this from just a regular reflectivity mode, just the regular reds and oranges and yellows all together, you can see there's the inflow notch, that little hook or
divot.
that little divot. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Where we would normally see that possible tornado, but this is kind of just an evolving thing as it makes its way toward I-20. Again,
Very erratic.
Tons of lightning with it as well. In fact, I don't need you to put the lightning up because I think it's just going to cloud our picture. But
I can do it rather quickly.
127 lightning strikes in the last 15 minutes in this storm alone. So
right, I just went ahead and put it up, right, Jared. You can see it all through the area, just near Shudrint, south of it as well. I'm only going to leave it up there for just a quick second because, again, it kind of clouds a lot of our view. About to get another scan, heading back over to velocity. And again, before I do, I'm going to let it scan to see if we can see that inflow notch is still there. And I would still say, obviously, it is. Watch how the reds start to curve back in,
yeah, and
that's what we're looking at.
Owens Road community, the Long Straw community, which is right along the Lincoln-Jackson line, Taylor Road, the Cartwright community, and areas, like I said, towards Shudrint. Make sure that you're in your safe place because this storm, whether it is tornadic or just a wind producer at this point, is headed your way. And again, I don't want to understate it. It's not it doesn't get as many weather headlines, if you will, but I can't understate how much heavy rainfall is embedded with some of these thunderstorms. So please keep that in mind, that a lot of our roadways will become quickly either covered or ponding with water, and that could lead to travel being very, very dangerous. So again, just exercise caution there too.
And what we're looking at is live storm tracker Doppler radar. Again, the reds, notice how they start to bend almost, this little wave pattern. It's not just a straight line, but the fact that they're kind of curving around with each other. Again, that's going to be indicative of itself, of that circulation trying to hold itself together, because not only do the reds and greens help us, but how they look. So it's a multifaceted approach of how we look at things, but it's still near Long Straw and Kelly's, just to the east of Ebenezer, I believe that is. Cartwright is also there. Tremont is just to the north and east of the circulation.
So Shudrint's pretty much, you know, in no offense to a lot of our smaller populated communities in this area, but that big focus is on this storm as it makes its way towards Shudrint. It'll impact Highway 80 in Shudrint. It'll impact I-20 near Shudrint. And so again, cannot stress that enough for folks that are perhaps doing some traveling between Ruston and West Monroe or Monroe. Those are the areas that are the biggest concern at this point.
And we were talking about where that potential circulation is, which is right around this area, but just look how little of an area it impacts versus the entirety of the storm itself. The heavy rainfall spans all the way through Shudrint now anyways, and so the heavy rainfall is going to be obscuring any type of visibilities along roadways and potentially causing some ponding along roadways as well. We've been talking about the flood risk quite frequently as well. And while we're looking at the radar, we're going to head back over to velocity. And I think it's still very apparent. I'm happy that they've continued the tornado warning here, Jared, because this thing has just continued to cycle, so to speak.
Yeah, and you're still getting a lot of stronger shear returns. In fact, our radar shear rate is showing still some pretty hot returns, basically indicating, if not a storm that's rotating, but maybe a storm that's producing some damaging wind gusts, or maybe both.
Right, and so that's what you're looking at here. Again, the greens and the reds mean different things on whatever mode that we're looking at. So we're looking at the shear rates here. And so when you see some of the darker greens and stuff, that's like, okay, it's some pretty decent shear. But when you see these little red dots, like you see right here, that's going to be indicative of some very strong shear. And so that's going to mean some differing wind speeds, things of the sort. And so again, just whatever we can look at to try to give us a good vantage point. And as mentioned, it's probably been mentioned a million times now, but folks in Shudrint, you need to be in your safe place. I can't understate that enough as of now. This storm has a history of producing a tornado that was on the ground and did cause some damages, and so we want to make sure that you're in your safe place and you're heeding the warnings regardless of whatever we're talking about or the current situation that you're in. And so for folks that they're wondering what your safest place might be, that's going to be the interiormost portion of your home in the bottom level too. So you don't want to be, if you have a two-story home, so to speak, you don't want to be on the top floor. You want to be on the bottom, so head down the stairs and head to some type of an interior bathroom, getting in the bathtub, staying away from glass, back doors, porches, any type of screened-in porch, anything like that, stay away from. That's going to be a no-go zone. And as long as you can't see the outside and you're in the bottom level, that's likely going to be your best bet, and bringing whatever type type of padding you can in with you, that's not a bad idea either, in the event that the tornado is continuing on the ground and does cause some debris. Going to head back over towards the reflectivity, because again, we're just trying to look at whatever we can now.
Should be crossing I-20 here shortly, Walker, in Shudrint. I'm just looking at what I've been seeing, and again, I'm just kind of pulled up in that same spot that you're generally in, maybe a smidge farther northward, but generally, basically right along the county, the parish line there in Lincoln and Jackson, so basically the middle part of your circle. We have about 18% of Jackson Parish without power. Now, and I'm going to continue to keep an eye on the tower cam,
right?
Just to make sure we don't see anything that we need to be seeing just real time. But there is a lot of lightning off in the distance. So again, Walker, I'll let you go ahead and kind of keep an eye on what we've got going on there.
All right, we're about to get another radar scan, and again, I'm going to be completely honest, folks. This is obviously, in my opinion, the circulation is still very well defined. So if you're looking at some of the reds and the oranges and yellows here, not necessarily the greens, but watch how it curves back in to that storm. And so that's where would be some of those winds moving into it, if you will. That's why I kind of wanted to look at the structure. And so potentially that tornado a little bit stronger, potentially, at least from the last reflectivity scan. So this one, it looks to be a little bit more present, so to speak. The reds and the greens are still there, and this would be the area just southeast of Shudrint or just right up on top of Shudrint. Again, there can be some discrepancies or issues depending on how the radar is looking at a storm, and Jared's continuing to monitor the tower cam at this point.
Blinding lightning off to the west. In fact, if we want to take the tower cam,
I can just see it in my peripheral.
Full, and just some of the lightning strikes that we've seen in the last, and the frame rate obviously is adjusting because we're hitting sunset in the dusk time frame, but we've just seen some blinding lightning along I-20. Still not seeing any lowerings or anything that could really indicate a possible tornado. Doesn't mean that it's not there, but again, just the heavy rainfall and the lightning aspect of this. We get a lot of storms in our area that aren't severe but are quite scary looking, quote unquote, and folks wonder why we're not on the air sometimes for a lot of. This is going to be a pretty menacing looking thunderstorm, regardless of what kind of warnings we're dealing with, but just the lightning and the heavy rainfall, and again, there's one of those big flashes that you see off in the distance. Just be aware of what's headed your direction in portions of Ouachita and Union and Morehouse parishes here in the next hour and a half, Walker.
Yep, and we're going to head back over towards the reflectivity here, some of the velocity, again, the wind speeds. We're going to wait for a radar here to come sweep back through and see what the newest scan does reveal. It, again, is moving a little bit further east on the side of that warning now. It was a little bit more middle set, but as the warning continues to work its way north, notice how it gets a little bit wider, just accounting for the fact that we're not quite sure what's going to happen in terms of its movement. It could have very well continued over closer to Ruston, but as of now, it's hugged a little bit further east, and it's now just to the east side of Shudrint. And so I'm going to get rid of this circle here, move it a little bit.
And again, this is not a confirmed tornado on the ground anymore. This is a radar indicated. So again, we don't want to overstate, but we don't want to understate. We don't want to overstate and say that this is a tornado on the ground because we can't confirm that at this point, but we also don't want to understate it and say you're fine if you're going to hop on I-20, because you're not. There's a lot of heavy rainfall, lightning, gusty winds, and perhaps a tornado embedded somewhere in there.
And what we're looking at still in structure is, again, this nice little storm here. You're seeing heavy rainfall well south of Shudrint, well north, but the circulation, as you see some of the reds bend into the storm, that would likely be because of the winds and that circulation trying to alter some of the rainfall. So what's happening here is live storm tracker Doppler radar is hitting, and a lot of that rainfall, and depending on how the winds operate and move around that rainfall, it kind of adjusts this image, and that's why we're circling this particular location. So back over to velocity, and you can kind of see some weird returns, but regardless.
Again, but where you coincide, where you have that circle, you're still seeing the bright reds and greens together, and it also coincides when you go back over to the reflectivity with that little notch hook that's still just kind of hanging out there right south of I-20. So again, it all just kind of fits together that the storm structure is there, whether it's producing a tornado or not. That's a little iffy at this point, but still a very organized storm. It's not like this storm is just completely collapsed at this point.
Right, and even some of the shear rate now, notice it's offset from my circle, but it's still relatively there. So the Doppler radar is picking up on something there in shear, and so it's just a little bit displaced, like I mentioned beforehand. It's not always going to be an exact science, but all the pieces to the puzzle are still fitting together. and I wouldn't be surprised to maybe have to see another warning that includes a little bit more further east, because this potential tornado is hugging the east side of the warning.
Yeah, Norris Road, and this will eventually impact portions of the Sibley Road area, but I'm looking at Emery Road, Parish Road 45. Now this is Lincoln Parish, and again the Walker Road area, Harris Road, Emery Road, and then farther northward toward Sibley Road and Parish Road 42. Those are the spots that need to keep an eye on the possible tornadic aspects of this storm as it crosses I-20 and Highway 80 probably here in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, and so you can kind of see some of the roads there. I do believe that's Crocker Road near the Tremont area, and again, Jared said the Norris Road region as we get another swipe of the radar here. And have you seen anything recently on correlation coefficient, any type of debris or anything, Jared? I don't think that you have.
I haven't seen it yet, but also keep in mind that all those radars are going to be shooting up pretty high at this point, so they may not see anything.
We're going to head back over to live storm tracker Doubt radar again. The rotation a little bit offset, and maybe that notch isn't quite as there as it was prior. It could be trying to broaden out again, taking that deep breath in before it takes another breath out. But as mentioned, the environment that we have in place is relatively undisturbed. So what do I mean by that? We still have plenty of storm energy to utilize, and so as the storm continues to move in the area that is ripe and has plenty of energy to utilize, it's likely going to hold itself together. Maybe it's not as favorable right now, but it could be pretty much later on. And so haven't seen much for rainfall north of I-20 today. Haven't really seen much of anything in South Arkansas outside of a storm earlier that I believe was in Union County. And so again, the relatively undisturbed atmosphere, undisturbed environment, and seeing some decent heavy rainfall, and likely will continue as well. And the heavy lightning is going to continue. I keep seeing the flashes in my peripheral. I just want to go ahead and show you the lightning that's continuing here. Just take a broad look, and
it's quite spectacular when you look at it on the tower cam. In fact, if you want to take that full for just a second, again, a reminder that a tornado warning is in effect. But this is what we're dealing with tower cam wise right now, and this is live. The frame rate, like I said, is a little. If it looks a little pixelated or almost like herky jerky, it's because we're hitting dusk. So we're going from daytime to nighttime mode, if you will. But I mean, it's almost continuous strobe light lightning off to the west. Again, we don't see anything that would indicate a tornado is imminent, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not happening. We're just kind of, like I said, we're probably a good 15, 20 miles at this point. In fact, the lightning's so bright at some points it's throwing it out of focus. So, but again, we'll continue to keep an eye on this. Actually, I'm going to move it.
I'm looking in the horizon there, Jared, to see if I can see anything at all.
Any kind of lowering or and I just don't see anything between lightning flashes, and I think it's just because we don't have the vantage point. I think
I think occasionally you get a far enough away strike that kind of backlights the extreme horizon, but again, it's really difficult to see, and I'm not really noticing anything now. And as you mentioned, not necessarily because it's not there, but because we might not have the greatest vantage point.
Focus on that, and so maybe we can. But again, the lightning is going to throw it all out of focus, so the autofocus from time to time. But again, just taking a look at the tower cam, this is not something you're going to want to drive through. And as I mentioned earlier, regardless of whether there's severe thunderstorm warnings or tornado warnings, this is a travel no-go along I-20 westbound from Monroe toward Ruston. And while we go back, I'll let Walker go ahead and set you back up on the wall. But just the latest info, severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado 9 miles east of Ruston, moving northeast at 30. So warning remains in effect again until 6 o'clock tonight, and flash flood warnings also popping up fairly widespread across the area, but clearly a very, very dangerous situation along I-20, and exercise caution. Again, possible tornado, gusty to damaging winds, things of that nature, all still possible, if not likely, along the interstate tonight in Lincoln Parish.
And so we're just now, it's just to the west of Calhoun. We did get an update on that warning there, so it's a little bit trimmed off. Frosttown and near Eureka, as well as Sibley, you're noticing very close to that rotation, that possible tornado. The warning has continued. The time now is 5:37. I do believe this warning is going to continue until 6 p.m., and that is going to stay the same. So depending on how the circulation treats it, unless it just completely vanishes, I really don't see us not getting another one, so to speak. So we're just going to have to see how things kind of play out. And again, I might switch over to reflectivity to see if I can see any type of structuring there, but obviously the reds and the greens are getting pretty muddled.
Yeah, it's Downsville next. I will say that in the last 3 swipes or so, does not look as organized and as strong as it did, but the structure is still there. So again, heed the warning, be in your safe place. Regardless, you're going to get pounded with some heavy rainfall and a lot of lightning and all that stuff, and this storm may recycle. It's already done that a couple of times.
Right, and so just a minute ago I was looking at the reflectivity, didn't look as strong, but this little notch here is a little bit concerning, so it could be trying to pick itself back up again, which happens from time to time, and that could be what's being indicated here on reflectivity as well. And again, we're looking at the best vantage point that we have. The Shreveport radar is going to be about 70 to 80 miles, that's a rough estimation on my part, away from where this location is, maybe even a little bit further. That could be underdone, but we're as close as we can with live storm tracker Doppler radar. And again, the circle is roughly where we believe that circulation to be within that tornado warning. It could be somewhere in this general area. So again, my circles aren't always, they're never going to be perfect. But nonetheless, the reds are still there, the greens are still there. As we hop back over to with the same circle, you're noticing that same little notch, that curve is also within that circle. So that's the two puzzle pieces that are fitting together, so to speak, is the fact that we have some type of structuring that could lead to the fact there's some type of potential rotation there, but also the fact that we have the reds and the greens in the same area. Those two puzzle pieces are fitting together, so to speak. And I'm going to look at a shear rate. And again, very indicative. So as of this point, even if that possible tornado isn't there, the greens are also highlighting the fact that the damaging wind threat is going to be there as well. And that's going to be well enough, strong enough potentially to maybe even knock some trees down, maybe even cause some other debris and things of that sort if it's getting pushed along in a straight line fashion. So being in your safe place is imperative. And as of now, I think we just got another update here. Again, that shear is staying pretty strong in that area.
Yeah, it's going to be headed toward the Downsville area. This is going to clip far northwestern reaches of Ouachita Parish. Looking at the Sibley communities, which it now looks like the storm just went through those areas near Sibley Road. Downsville and the Smyrna communities, this is right along the Lincoln and Union Parish line and eventually into southern sections of Union Parish. The Wilhite community and areas along 552, you are not technically in this tornado warning at this point, but I'm just kind of looking downstream at areas like McCrary Road, the Terrells community along Highway 552, that's in western sections, southwestern sections of Union Parish. Keep an eye on this storm because you folks are up next. Regardless of what it's bringing, it's headed your direction.
And so we're getting another swipe here, and again, it gets messy sometimes because you have to make sure or account for the fact that the radar is not just reading the winds, it's reading the rain and any potential debris that's getting kicked up by any type of wind. It can read the dust, things of that sort. So nonetheless, it's not an exact science, but that red and green pattern still there. And again, the structuring likely also still there. And it's moved a little bit slower now than I would say over the last 20 to 30 minutes or so, Jared. I don't know if you would concur because I feel like it's almost come to a screeching halt.
And
not really, but
it did that a while back too, back in Jones and portions of near the Jonesboro Hodge area. It looked like it kind of just slowed its forward motion down, but that's also the last time it took one of those big deep breaths, if you will, and started to spin back up again. You've also got some areas farther southward too that the reds and greens are starting to kind of ooze together a little bit. So while they're not a huge concern at this point, the environment's very favorable in a lot of these areas.
Right, and it's almost, like I said, it's kind of wandering to the eastern side of that warning there, so if we got a new one, I wouldn't be surprised if it maybe encapsulate places a little bit further east, so I wouldn't be surprised by that. Don't let it surprise you either. And just bouncing back and forth between the three things, you still see the shear rate still there, and the velocity obviously still indicating some type of rotation. This is the only tornado warning that we have as of now, and this storm, this exact storm, has held itself together for over an hour now. So we got on the air originally for one tornado warning, that one dissipated, and we've had this one or another one up until now. So since about the 3:40 time frame, and it's moved all the way from just outside of our area near the Wind Parish region. I actually do believe this same storm system was around Natchitoches, so you can kind of see how long that it's lasted, and there's been some potential for long-lasting tornadoes today, some potentially very strong as well. So that's in the forecast, and that's going to continue to be possible later on this evening, and it's some long-track tornadoes. That's what I would consider this circulation to be long-tracked, not necessarily if it was on the ground, but regardless, it's still holding itself together.
Also, just like I said, keep in mind that there are some other areas of some strong winds. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and join you on the wall, on the BAM for just a second, and so we can take a look at the wall, or look at what's going on across portions of Ouachita Parish. And as Walker just circled that out, that's the area that he just circled right here. But there's also other areas of at least gusty winds. Eris, Chatham, and some of these areas moving into western Ouachita Parish. Here's our radar site. If you're familiar with the West Monroe studios right across the street from the Ike Hamilton Expo Center, that's our radar site. Here's Richwood, Monroe, Sterlington, Farmerville's up here, and there's our tornado warning moving to the north. And again, that goes until 6 o'clock. But also, at times, we've seen little areas just to the south of the main circulation. We're talking areas in western sections of Ouachita Parish and even southwestern sections of Ouachita Parish that have started to try to spin a little bit. Not much. There's no warnings out for that type of activity, but we are just continuing to monitor that. But for anyone that is in this area from basically Farmerville, and it's going to be tough to see, but you could see the outlines of Lake D'Arbonne here. Farmerville's right here. But again, that's much of Union Parish, and we talked about the Smyrna communities and some of these spots that are up next with this tornado warning as it moves into your area. I just want to stress that this could be one of a few different rounds of strong to severe thunderstorms. And as we go deeper and deeper into the night, there's a lot of uncertainty regarding what we're going to run into in terms of potentially a second, maybe even a third round of strong to severe thunderstorms. We may not see anything, but we also could see additional warnings and watches that may be needed as the night progresses. So just please keep that in mind, that that coverage may kind of come and go. We may be able to leave you for a couple of hours and then have to rejoin you. We just don't know what's going to happen with these warnings and really what happens with the environment as we head through the rest of the evening. So again, the main parent tornado warning is this area right here, and you can still pinpoint it out there in far southern sections of Union Parish. Keep in mind, Farmerville just got hit by a tornado, an EF3 a couple of weeks ago, and this one's going to be moving to the north and east, probably just to the east of impacted areas. But again, just heed the warning in those spots. I'll continue to keep an eye on these spots back out to the south. But again, as the storms crawl eastward, Monroe, West Monroe, and a lot of these spots expect some very, very frequent lightning. Even if you don't see severe weather from these storms, if you just get the general thunderstorm activity, be prepared for frequent lightning, extremely heavy rainfall, and those gusty to perhaps even damaging winds at times. Walker, I'll go ahead and send it back over to you at the wall, and we'll continue to keep you updated on this storm and any other activity off to the south.
And I appreciate that, Jared. I just want to expand on what you were saying about, well, we could potentially see another 2 or 3 rounds later on this evening, but there's still some questions as to what those rounds look like. Because if I'm being completely honest, not quite sure if we're expecting a nice concentric line of storms that spans the whole area, or if things stay a little bit more isolated. So there's still some differing ideas from one computer model to another. So just an FYI, the severe weather is not a guarantee for anybody. Thunderstorms aren't going to be a guarantee, but nonetheless, if you have a way, you need to make sure you have a way of receiving severe weather alerts late tonight and have them.
Walker,
go for it.
Walker, real quick. For folks that are in Calhoun, Calhoun School Road, Owens Road, a lot of these areas, go ahead and get to your safe place. I know there's not a tornado warning for your area, but go ahead and get to your safe place just in case. Calhoun, Carlton, Claiborne Road, areas along Highway 80 and I-20 in western sections of Ouachita Parish. I'm just telling you this just to err on the side of extreme caution here. We got big storms headed that way anyway. There's not a warning there of any stretch, but for folks in Calhoun, again, near Calhoun School Road, along Highway 80, you're talking about Calhoun Middle and a lot of those spots right there in the middle of town, the Curry Creek area and stuff like that. Go ahead and be in your safe place now. Go ahead and take the proper tornado precautions. Again, there is not a tornado warning there, but I just want folks there just in case.
Right, I think I'm right around the area that you're discussing there, Jared. Again, the Calvert Crossing, so he mentioned some of the areas. Again, like he mentioned, there's not an active tornado warning, but nonetheless, we have a pretty decent vantage point looking at live storm tracker Doppler radar.
Severe thunderstorm warning now out for portions of Caldwell, Jackson, Lincoln, Ouachita, and Union parishes with a tornado possible tag indicating that there is the possibility a tornado could form, but don't be surprised if that new severe thunderstorm warning, there's your new severe thunderstorm
Yeah, it'll pop
warning.
up on my screen here in just a second.
It is enormous.
Oh, okay, I think I see it. Yeah, goodness gracious, I do see
It's
it.
really, really big. That's why it doesn't. But again, that area near Calhoun actually looks even stronger now than it did earlier. So again, I just want folks to be in your safe place. I don't want this to be one of those instances where we get damage reports here in 5 or 10 minutes and we should have said something. So again, Calhoun and points eastward, just err on the side of caution. We may be doing all of this for nothing,
right.
and I'd rather be doing it that way. So again, just get to your safe place now if you're in Calhoun.
Right, and areas just east, so you see Shinny, and so folks right along the I-20 area, that's going to be the same general location. So if you're in that location, I know there's not a red flashing box for you to adhere to, so to speak. Just go ahead and be in your safe place. And again, like we mentioned earlier, severe thunderstorm warnings need to be taken with extreme caution as well. And so you see how widespread the severe thunderstorm is. All this area that I'm pointing out, you can see it all the way just east of Shoudre, all the way behind me. That's a severe thunderstorm warning. And so it's almost as if the entire area does need to go ahead and either have a plan to get in their safe place or potentially already be there, especially if you're within some of those areas that we just mentioned. Now, I'm going to quickly go back over towards the parent tornado warning that we were looking at earlier. And it's still around the same locations. I'm seeing McCrary Road, Highway 552, Hamilton Road, near Downsville, just east of Downsville. And that's the circulation that we're still looking at. I'm going to hop over to reflectivity mode instead of some of the reds and greens that we've seen.
Yeah, and as Walker continues to hit those places up, I just want to, again, remind folks in Calhoun along I-20, this is also now headed toward the Calvert Crossing area, so Hodge-Watson Road, some of those spots, as I mentioned, Curry Creek, kind of at the point where Highway 80 and I-20 meet. Did we just lose everything? Are we good?
I think we're all right over here.
Okay, all right. Everything just flashed in the studio, so I didn't know if we had lost a connection on air.
But Jared, I'm not sure. This guy might be trying to spin back up again. It does look to potentially be a little bit stronger.
Go ahead and go with that.
Yeah, so we're going to go with this parent tornado warning, and again, this one goes until about 6 p.m. We haven't seen another warning for it issued just yet, so the National Weather Service is going to have some decision-making to do over the next 10 minutes or so. And so, again, the structure is still there. Still seeing that red start to bend back into the storm, and if you head back over to the velocity, you can still see the reds and the greens still there. The greens, the very wavy pattern that we're noticing here, that potential tornado still holding itself together. We'll see what the next scan does bring us. And again, we're still looking at something there. That tornado warning is still into effect until 6. We'll see what happens with that guy. I'm going to leave that up on the screen and also include areas a little bit further south of this.
Yeah, and we're just going to kind of, like I said, there's two different areas, and so
I'm going to circle it, Jared.
Actually, stay right where you are. Yeah, circle what you got, but stay right there for just a second. And I just want to kind of grab, let everybody see this for just a second. So again, National Weather Service is still indicating a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado, and so we just wanted to kind of keep an eye on this, and we may need a new tornado warning with what's going on near Calhoun right now. So again, what you're seeing right now on screen are two areas of concern, is what we'll call it. The tornado-warned storm that is now moving its way into southern sections of Union Parish, and then another area that we're seeing at around 500 feet just down the I-20. It doesn't look overly organized, but in terms of very, very strong winds. But when you combine that with what we're seeing on reflectivity, that's just the one thing that just has me worried. Again, it doesn't look like much, but I would just rather folks in Calhoun be in their safe place and switch back over to a different...
Right, Jared, and regardless of that rotation is there, it's going to have some very heavy winds associated, strong winds, and winds still capable of maybe knocking a limb down, something of that sort. So,
and your other circulation started to gas back up again. So
that's what I was assuming.
Yep.
As I mentioned
near the Terrells community and Highway 552, there's a lot of strong winds there. So again, I think this storm center is reforming a little bit back toward the center of the polygon. When you reference it with the actual storm, look at the reflectivity, you're going to get a better look at it. And the rain really arriving here at the West Monroe Studios. We're probably going to start seeing our radar power be impacted by the heavy rain.
Right, so when the heavy rain hits our radar, it can impact the beam and how it starts to read stuff. So if you start to see some weirdness going on with some of these pixels, that's what's happening. So just try to avoid that as much as possible. I'm going to head back over to reflectivity to see if we can see any type of structure associated with it. But obviously I see the rotation now. It's still there, and we do believe it's spinning back up again. And this would, and goodness gracious, I'm having some problems with...
yeah, that's okay. And also on that note, new tornado warning is now out for Union County and Union Parish. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado 8 miles southeast of Farmerville, 11 miles northwest of Claiborne, moving northeast at 40. So that is basically a new warning, a downstream warning, if you will, that will include portions of Union Parish and Union County.
And the area that we're looking at is right around this circle. It's going to be a rough estimate because depending on the structure, it could be on the north side of this or on the south side. But regardless, that tornado warning is going to continue until what time is 7 p.m. And it's just east of Farmerville, or eastern portions of Farmerville also included in that tornado warning. And as Jared mentioned just a handful of minutes ago, with one of the severe episodes we saw about 2 weeks ago, there was a EF3 that touched down in the Farmerville community and could impact some of the same areas potentially. Again, that warning includes far eastern portions of Farmerville, could just be outside a lot of the downtown areas. But if you see that little notch, what we got going on, that's the area that is a little bit more concerning. The rotation that we're monitoring. I'm going to head back to the velocities here and look a little bit further south as well. And yeah, Jared, I do believe this guy's spinning back up again. You're noticing some brighter colors in those reds and the greens being a little back closer together.
Yeah, and where you're starting to see those pinks, that's where embedded within those greens and you know, to be honest with you, you don't see things like this a whole lot in terms of, you know, getting to use all the different radar modes and being able to apply what you're seeing here. But again, you've got that area circled, and I would say even just a smidge farther west of your circle is probably where we're seeing that possible tornado. But definitely wrapped in there, heavy rainfall, frequent lightning, definitely want to be sheltered and indoors.
And so this is what's happened with this storm, I believe 2 times now. So before it originally was confirmed on the ground, the storm system actually slowed down just a little bit, and then as it started to get strengthened back up, it sped back up again. So this same circulation was just a minute ago a little bit weaker. I mentioned that it was kind of slowing down just a bit, and then we're kind of speculating, okay, maybe it's going to strengthen back up, and that's what appears to have happened yet again. So if noticing some of these storms slow back down, maybe that's can be a little bit of a helpful telltale. Maybe it's going to strengthen back up again. I'm going to leave that circle back up there. I'm going to venture a little bit further south because, again, we have a widespread severe thunderstorm warning as of this point. Very strong windfall, or winds are likely associated with it moving along I-20. So this is the apparent tornado, that possible tornado, folks, being in your safe place. We're going to go for road names here in just a second. But all this area that you're seeing south of the tornado warnings, that's also going to accompany some potential for damaging wind gusts. That's why the severe thunderstorm warning is in effect. And again, we've seen 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That's pretty easily seen. But anyway, going to head back over to this area and see what we can see in terms of road names.
Yeah, All Britain Road, Carter Road, Ruggs Bluff Road, Mosley's Bluff, Allen Mann Road, Ruggs Bluff Road, Highway 552 in the Point community. Now, Point is technically not in this tornado warning, but
right where I'm circling, just to the east of it.
Actually, excuse me, hang on. We may be zoomed into. No, Point is in the tornado warning. My apologies. Point is in the tornado warning. They're in the new tornado warning. They're not in the old tornado warning. Our apologies. That's again why we tend to not zoom in so far in, because you can kind of get blinded by what you're trying to see.
Right, but the circulation at least is in terms of trying to see road names around the same areas that he mentioned. Again, Mosley's Bluff and Ruggs Bluff Road, these areas, and this would be that possible tornado what we're looking at. I'm going to get a little bit of a wider look so we're not as suffocated, so to speak, on looking at one in particular area. And at least at this point, Jared, we haven't seen too much attenuation be impacted by some of the heavy rainfall that we're seeing. So at least we can kind of get this circulation a little bit better of a picture. I'm going to go in and circle it one more time around this area. Gonna head back over to the reflectivity, see if we can see for structure.
and then I would just leave it on that reflectivity. You could take the hand tracker buttons down for a second. In fact, you could step off for just a second as well. Grab yourself a swig of water. Like I said, Walker's been running the hand tracker for about 2 hours now straight, and your arms get tired doing that stuff. But again, just want to drive the point home of what's going on, and I'll let you back on the hand tracker whenever you're ready, but just want to kind of drive the point home with the area that is circled currently, that Walker has circled for you, is in southern sections of Union Parish. And again, this is the parish line, Ouachita Union Parish line. Here's Sterlington, Highway 2, here's Farmerville, and these are the areas that were impacted by the EF3 just north of town, in the areas headed toward El Dorado. It was just these areas north of town that were impacted by the EF3 earlier. So you could see this little hook, this area, that appendage that we've been talking about for so long. It will move a little bit farther to the north and east. We're going to get a new radar scan every 60 seconds. And so with every 60 seconds, you're going to get a new look at this storm as it starts to move off to the north and east. And again, at times, it has shown that it has started to rotate more aggressively, and that's where we become increasingly more concerned about the possibility of a tornado. But then there are also times where it looks a little worse for the wear and doesn't really look like it's doing much, and that's the better news. That's a positive thing. But the other thing that I want to keep in mind is as we kind of scan down just a tad, actually I got to turn the telestrator off, and we're going to clear everything out there. But really what I want to drive the point home is as we look farther down at the leading line of storms that's headed toward Ouachita Parish right now, there's probably some very, very strong, if not damaging, wind gusts embedded within this line of storms. That's why the severe thunderstorm warning is out. But also on that note, there is some torrential rainfall. We're talking some areas have already seen 3.5 inches of rain. Looking down toward Wind Pier